Welcome back, Commissioners. We'll give it a moment for Chair Harrington to join us.
We are waiting for both Commissioner Rogers and Chair Harrington to join us. Is that my understanding?
Jerry, I'm here. I'm just eating lunch.
Okay.
Okay.
It is 1:04, and I'd like to reconvene the work session.
Right.
May I do that, Mr. Moss?
You may, Mr. Vice Chair. So
Okay.
We have Rachel Fuller and Judy Lynn and Michael for item number 2 for you.
Okay, thank you very much. For the record, Commissioner Treese, yes, you have your hand up.
We can't hear you.
Do we have, I'm sorry, do we have a protocol for how many minutes late people need to be? And the other question I'd like to ask is whether or not we know, if we've heard from Chair Harrington, if she has any issues getting online.
We don't have a protocol for when we start meetings. I don't know if you've had any communication, Miss Angie, from the chair.
I just sent her a text just a minute ago, so I haven't seen a response yet, but my text could still be traveling.
Okay, if you want to wait a couple minutes, I'm not in a hurry. I just don't like to make staff wait, and we have a very full agenda for the afternoon. I have a hard stop at 4 o'clock for another meeting, but we'll see how that progresses.
You just joined.
Please proceed without me and I will come back in a moment. So Vice Chair
All right.
Willie, please run the work session.
All right, thank you. So we will reconvene work session, and we have all commissioners are in attendance. We are going to discuss appointments to the Washington County Service District for Lighting Number 1 and Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District, Urban Road Maintenance District Budget Committees. And we have Rodney, and it looks like we have Rachel as for the staff report. So please proceed.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Willie, Commissioners. My name is Rachel Fuller, and I serve as Assistant County Administrator for Washington County. I'm joined by Judy Lynn and Michael Clark, who both serve as interim budget managers for Washington County. The purpose of this item is to review recommendations and make appointments to the budget committees for Washington County, Service District for Lighting 1, and to review recommendations and make appointments to the budget committees for Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District and Urban Road Maintenance District. Each budget committee is composed of the governing body and an equal number of electors appointed by the governing body. Appointments are made for 3-year terms, and the committees meet as often as necessary to complete the budget business, which includes receiving the budget message, receiving public input, deliberations, and approval of their respective budgets. The Washington County and Service District for Lighting Number 1 budget committees have 2 vacancies and received 11 applicants. The ESPD and URMD budget committees have 2 vacancies and received applications from 6 community members. Each application was reviewed and each candidate was interviewed. For Washington County and Service District for Lighting Number 1, staff recommend appointment of Paul Lathrop and Joseph Ross. And for Enhanced Sheriff's Patrol District and Urban Road Maintenance District, staff recommend appointment of Fernando Lira and Sean Fields. And again, Michael Clark and Judy Lynn have joined me, and we are happy to answer any questions.
All right, commissioners, are there any questions on either one of these recommended positions? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. Then we'll do this in 2 steps. I'd entertain a motion to approve the recommended appointments for the Washington County and Service District Lighting Number 1 Budget Committee, Paul Lathrop and Joseph Ross.
So, Mr. Vice Chair, this is just a work session. You'll consider that at the formal
Okay.
meeting, so you don't need a motion.
All right.
yet.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I lost control of myself here. So, okay. Any questions on either one of these appointments then? I was pretty encouraged that we had 11 applicants for that one position and 6 for the other. So that's a good showing on that. Any other comments or questions on these? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Rachel. And we will move on to item number 3, Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee member appointment. And we have staff report there.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Vice Chair Willie. Good afternoon, Commissioners and Vice Chair Willie. My name is Mira Samantha. I'm the Interim Director of Health and Human Services. We're pleased to be here with you this afternoon to present recommendations for our Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee. I have with me today Kathy Folsom. She's our Senior Policy Recycling Division within Health and Human Services. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Kathy.
Thanks, Mira. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Willie and Commissioners. As Mira indicated, my name is Kathy Folsom, and I'm a Senior Policy Coordinator with the Solid Waste and Recycling Division. And I'm here this afternoon to seek your guidance on an appointment for one open public member position on the Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee. The Garbage and Recycling Advisory Committee, or GRAC, has 10 members, 8 voting public members, 1 voting industry member, and 1 non-voting member who is the manager of the Solid Waste and Recycling Division. The board approved GRAC bylaws were developed to ensure that the committee seeks to represent the whole community. All community members serving on the GRAC shall work and/or live in Washington County, Incorporated Washington County. The Solid Waste and Recycling Division received 9 applications for the one open public member position. We reviewed each application and held informational meetings with the applicants. Our candidate for consideration is Leslie Albert. Leslie lives in unincorporated Washington County and works for Kinship as a senior manager corporate communications. She has extensive volunteer experience, most recently with Solve, the Oregon Food Bank, and Feed the Mass. And she's very interested in taking steps to ensure there is adequate trash and recycling disposal in education. Currently, she doesn't serve on any other county boards or commissions. And although not required in the bylaws, we are striving to have diverse geographic representation on the committee. And if appointed, Leslie would be the only sitting member from District 3. So, and I'm available for questions.
All right. Commissioners, any questions? Once again, a great applicant pool to choose from, 9 individuals. So again, that's impressive. That's a very important and certainly not controversial group that's going to have to deal with some issues certainly over the next period of time. So thank you very much for that. Again, commissioners, any questions or comments? If not, thank you very much for your staff report, and we will move on to item number 4.
Commissioner
MSTIP
Willie.
Commissioner?
program. Yep.
It looks like the chair's hand is raised.
Ah, I'm sorry, Chair. Go right ahead.
If you're speaking, Chair, we're not hearing you.
Thank you for recognizing me. For some reason, my video isn't working at the moment. I think I'll have to reboot my laptop during a break. I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. We will then move
Vice
on
Chair.
to item number 4.
Vice Chair Willie, before we move on to that item, we ran out of time during the morning work session discussion for the letters that were included in your packet. And our senior GR manager, Aaron Doyle's been holding on. So I would ask that we do come back to this at this time.
Well, thank you. And we also didn't have an opportunity to hear from you or Brad or Clean Water Services this morning. So I apologize for skipping over you to start. So let's reconvene back there. And certainly, Aaron, if you want to start and lead the conversation, go right ahead.
Thank you, Vice Chair Willie, and good afternoon, Commission. I'm Erin Doyle, your Senior Government Relations Manager. The packet of letters that was included for your consideration today reflects 12 letters of support related to the appropriations process that the U.S. House of Representatives is undertaking. We have assumed that each of our partners won't just be applying on the Senate side, but also on the House side. So we wrote these letters reflective of the chance for the board to weigh in as a county commission as opposed to individually, because we had an opportunity to have this public conversation. I have since learned that Tigard is no longer planning to move forward with their hall improvements project request to either the Senate or the House. So in reality now, it would be 11 letters of support signed by the chair on behalf of the commission, reflecting the commission's support for all 11 of these projects, which you have seen. And with that, I leave it to your discussion, or if you have any questions of me, happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Aaron. That was a Herculean lift, all those letters, pulling all that information together. So thank you certainly for doing that. Commissioners, do you have any comments on these letters? Roy, you are unmuted. Are you going to speak to us? I guess not. So any other comments? Again, that's these letters were all great, and thank you for pulling those together. I really believe I've read the Salmonberry Trail, as I have requested all the commissioners to sign on to, has reached out to me, showing their appreciation for the commission all signing on to this letter of support, and I'm sure that every other organization that we have represented here is doing the same thing. So thank you all very much for taking the time to respond back to Aaron, and especially Aaron, thank you for your work on getting those done. So I'm not seeing any opposition here. Aaron, do you have any further comments?
I would also just like to thank Chris and the team at LUT, because they also handled a huge portion of these letters and getting it drafted with a lot of those transportation projects. So it was not a shop of one, it was a shop of many raising these issues. So I think we just need a thumbs up to ensure that this is the direction you would like us to go with the signing from all of you. Thank you.
Okay. All right, we all ready to do that? Let's give it a thumbs up.
Vice Chair Willie, Chair Harrington has her hand up.
Yep, that's my thumbs up.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry. I don't have as big a screen as everybody, so I have 9 squares up there, and that's all I have. So I'm gonna thank you for all the help on telling me when the hands are raised. So is everybody good with this? Not seeing any oppositions here. So, okay. Is that good, Aaron?
Yes, thank you all very much.
All right, you bet. Okay, let's go back to Tanya, and if you could give us your report.
Okay, and I will keep my comments brief. From time to time, the board receives questions from our community around operations at the Bonnie Hayes Animal Shelter. So I want to share an update on the operations. For the board's awareness, healthy adoptable animals have not been euthanized at Bonnie Hayes Animal Shelter since 2010. The incinerator was decommissioned in 2019 after years of decreased use. And as recently as Monday, March 14th, the incinerator was actually removed from the premises at the Bonnie Hayes Animal Shelter. So this is a question that I know staff get and the board gets from time to time. So I wanted to share with the board that we have moved forward with actually removal of that at the shelter. Relative to LUT, staffing, hiring of staff, we've shared with the board just recruitment challenges in general. And I just want to commend our LUT team for coming up with a creative way and actually a growth pipeline within LUT. Staff, to Washington County staff, the county is paying for CDL training because we have had a challenge of getting CDL licensed employees. And so for awareness, CDL drivers operate many of our vehicles in the county, such as road, ditch, vegetation maintenance. So these are really essential services. And this is a way to provide a pathway and career growth for Washington employees. So I really commend our LUT team for coming up with that creative solution. Relative to elections, something new this year, Washington County military and overseas voters will now be able to mark their ballots electronically through a software called VOATS, which is a new mobile voting application. They'll be offered this service in time for the May 17, 2020 election. The elections office is excited to provide this secure mobile solution because it does reduce barriers due to blocked locations, untimely delivery, or expensive international postage of ballots. So that's exciting news as well. And then also just from information sharing, and this information will be shared with Washington County employees, our community development office has organized bringing Anywhere But Here display to the Public Services Building later this month. This is a portable museum quality exhibit, which outlines Oregon's largely unknown history of discrimination, segregation, and displacement. It also educates us on the progress made in overcoming this history and the challenges that remain. The 7-panel display with photographs and quotes will be just outside the Public Services Building auditorium from April 18th and through the 29th. And so we hope staff and the community come and check out this educational display. And that concludes my update.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Thought my mic was off, so I was coughing on you. So any other questions? Any questions for Tanya? Not seeing anyone. Brad, got any updates for us from the legal department?
Sure. So just a quick issue. As you're aware, Tom is out on vacation this week. He is somewhere out riding his bike in Texas, but we anticipate that he will be with us. He shared with me that he will be with us for the executive sessions this afternoon. So we'll have full coverage for those meetings. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Mark, Clean Water Services.
Thank you, Vice Chair Willie, members of Clean Water Services Board. As I shared with you last night, Diane had an exposure to a positive COVID case and has also developed cold-like symptoms, although is testing negative, but I think out of an abundance of caution is quarantining at home, particularly as her husband is scheduled to have surgery on Thursday. So she's balancing a number of things there. A couple other things we're looking forward to spending, and welcome back, Chair. Nice to see you on video again. We look forward to spending Thursday with you for our board training. We'll have about 2.5 hours in the morning of some staff work on some strategic planning and report out. And then at lunch, we'll be having a joint lunch for the Soil and Water Conservation District Board and staff and board of directors, and then taking a tour to a farm site to look at where there's an intersection of a bunch of federal program funding, Clean Water Services program funding, and soil and water conservation funding. The other thing that we shared with you last week in the Privy Council was distributed on Thursday morning is last week's presidential budget included $2.5 million for the Scoggins Dam safety work. More importantly than that, the budget justification itself reported that Reclamation anticipates completing the environmental assessment for the dam safety work by this summer, with the actual project funding going to the Office of Management and Budget in 2023. So that has accelerated that project a bit. It still has construction out several years, but we're happy to see that moving quickly. And then as a final note that was indicated in last week's Privy Council, the board will be getting the proposed budget on Friday the 22nd in advance of our budget committee meeting, which will be on Friday, May 6th. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mark. And certainly give our best wishes to Diane to get healthy so we can make sure we see her on Thursday. And I know that she'll keep us up to speed on that. Any questions of Mark? And I'm not seeing any. So, Chair, are you ready to resume leading the meeting?
Oh, you can keep at it if you'd like.
Now, I'll acquiesce to you.
All righty. Okay, so have we gone to leadership communications with Mr. Anderson? Yeah, that happened while I was rebooting. Okay. So that brings us back to topic 4 on the work session agenda. Okay, so we'll turn it over then to Mr. Roberts and his staff to take us through the Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program, MSTIP 23 through 28 program update.
Thank you, commissioners. As always, I'm going to turn things over to Erin Wardell from our staff, Principal Transportation Planner. She'll walk us through a presentation. Erin and myself will be here to answer questions. I believe we also may have John L. Bell and Fabiola Casas joining us from Espousal Strategies, who have been working with us on our community outreach for the program. And of course, we'll all be available to answer questions at the end. So thank you.
Thank you. My name is Erin Wardell. I'm the Principal Transportation Planner and the Project Manager for the MSTIP Program Allocation Project. Next slide, please. We're really happy to be here today because I think we're about to reach a major milestone of this work, which is releasing the call for projects. And after working on this for about a year, I know that we and our city partners are really excited about going into this next phase of the work. So for our presentation today, we'll be talking through the recommended actions, reviewing our proposed evaluation metrics, talking through the elements of the project proposal packet that we intend to release after this meeting, and then talking through the proposed project submittals that county staff will likely be preparing, and then talking about next steps in our timeline. Next slide. So our recommended actions after this briefing today would be for the board to confirm the use of the proposed evaluation metrics to guide our project selection process. The Washington County Coordinating Committee unanimously recommended board approval at their March 14th meeting. We're then asking the board to direct staff to open the call for projects from April 6th to May 3rd, and direct staff to prepare applications for a selection of projects that we would like to put forward to be considered for potential MSTIP funding. We'll come back to these at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So we've talked before about our process of developing the evaluation metrics. We started this by convening a technical work group to expand our technical expertise and work more closely with our city partners. We also expanded our knowledge base to include Clean Water Services and staff from our Public Health, Health and Human Services Department. We held 2 meetings of this technical work group, and they helped us to generate the universe of possible ways that we could evaluate transportation projects. We also worked with our consultants from Espousal Strategies to make sure that we were incorporating equity through our project evaluation measures and incorporating the feedback that we heard from the community through our community engagement. We reviewed the proposal with the WCCC TAC, the Transportation Advisory Committee, on January 6th and February 3rd, and they did make a recommendation to approve these evaluation metrics. And then we reviewed with the County Coordinating Committee on January 11th and February 14th. And again, they had unanimous recommendation to support the evaluation metrics as developed. Next slide. Let's see the next slide. There we are. So one of the new features of this year's program evaluation or program process allocation was that we did an initial phase of community engagement in order to inform the development of these project evaluation measures. So we used the feedback that we generated from our online open house, our 2 listening sessions, 3 focus groups, and stakeholder interviews in order to inform our recommended evaluation metrics. So much of the community input we heard is summarized on this slide. We've heard a lot about bicycle and pedestrian safety, specifically sidewalk and bike lane gaps in our system and the need for improvements to street lighting. We've heard a lot about increasing safe access to important locations, meaning the places that people need to be able to go. We heard about limiting the effects of air pollution through a variety of different ways in our transportation system. We heard concern about the high growth areas in Washington County and just the growth we're experiencing in general, causing more traffic and delay, particularly on our heavily used primary routes throughout the county. And then we heard about need for more transit service and better access to transit, meaning people would like to be able to get to a transit station so that they can make better use of the transit that is available, and they'd like to see more transit service available in Washington County as well. Next slide. So these next 2 slides talk through the proposed evaluation metrics. What you're seeing on the slide is in the first column, the evaluation metric, and then the MSTIP outcomes that we believe that this metric will address. So I'll read through what these are. The first is that a project reduces barriers and disparities faced by historically excluded communities. The next is that a project improves equitable access to centers, jobs, schools, and essential community places and services, particularly for members of historically excluded communities. The next is increases equitable opportunities for walking and bicycling. And the next is increases equitable access to transit. Next slide. Then we have increases vehicular travel reliability, improves safety for all travelers, enhances the built or natural environment or improves climate resiliency, and finally brings additional funding to Washington County. So all of these put together will be how we will evaluate the projects that are submitted and then present that to the community for their input and then bring that back through the county coordinating committee and the board in the fall. Next slide. So a really important component of how we'll be evaluating these projects is using the equity index that we developed along with our partners at Espousal. We have been talking about this equity index quite a bit at a variety of the meetings that we've been to, and it's generated quite a bit of interest. One of the really interesting things that I think we've done, which has advanced our practice and how we've looked at the data, is expanding the equity index beyond just the demographics of where people live and looking at the characteristics of places people need to go, as well as looking at our transportation deficiencies. And so this will be a key part of how the projects are evaluated and how city and county staff, when they're proposing their projects, fill in the information in the project proposal packet. Next slide. Which brings us to the next slide, talking about the project proposal packet. In the past, we've been a little bit more informal about how MSTIP projects were submitted for consideration. And for this cycle, we would like to make sure that we get as much information about projects up front as possible while working with our city staff to determine what additional information would be helpful as you eventually make the funding decision. So this slide talks about the elements that will be included in that project proposal packet, which is included in your packet today. First, we're asking for information about the project purpose and a general description. We're then asking for the applicant to confirm that the project meets the eligibility criteria for MSTIP. And those eligibility criteria are, does it meet multimodal needs? Is it located on the streets of countywide interest map that your board acknowledged back in the fall? And is the project included in a locally adopted plan? So that's the eligibility criteria, and those boxes need to be checked to move forward. We're then asking questions in the application about how the proposed project meets our outcomes-based evaluation metrics. So this will be a data exercise and also a narrative exercise to talk about how the projects as proposed meet our outcomes. Next slide. So moving on, the next part of this presentation talks about the projects that county staff are recommending that we submit. This is when we shift from being the overall program administrator and also to an agency that can submit projects for funding. And so while we expect our city partners will also be submitting a number of projects, these are the projects that county staff have generated through our plan documents and through conversations with the commissioners. This is our list of projects that we would like to propose county staff submit. So this is actually on two different slides. So the first 5 are listed on this slide. So we're proposing Farmington Road between 173rd and 209th. And this project cost estimate would be for a complete street project, but we're proposing that this would be a match for potential state or federal funds to complete this project, which is an ODOT facility today. A part of this would likely lead to jurisdictional transfer to the county. The next project would be 170th Avenue between Alexander Street and Merlot Road. Again, a complete street project. This project is already funded for design in the current phase of MSTIP. Alexander Street between 178th and 192nd, complete street. This is another project currently funded for design. 185th Avenue from Farmington to Kinnaman, complete street project. This is a project that was considered in Metro's 2020 Regional Transportation Funding Measure. And then 205th Avenue bridge replacement between Baseline and Fatama Road. Next slide, please. And the next 5 projects are Blanton Street between 198th Avenue and the West Side Trail. This would be a complete street project with the interim TV trail. This is a project that emerged through the TV trail concept plan that we completed last year. We then have the Saltzman Road project, the segment from Bayonne to Laidlaw, and this would be a realignment and or complete street improvement. Then we have the Beaverton Hillsdale Highway, Olson Road, Shoals Ferry intersection project. This is a very challenging and very expensive project. The proposal would be to have placeholder funds as a potential match for potential state or federal funds for completing this intersection project in coordination with ODOT. The next proposed project is Walker Road between Parkway and Highway 217. This would be a complete street project. And then finally, the Basalt Creek Parkway Bridge Extension Project between Graham's Ferry and Boone's Ferry Road. And this would be a complete street as well as a bridge structure project most likely a match for potential state or federal funds. I have shared this list with our city partners, particularly focusing on the projects that are within cities or adjacent to cities. And we have general support for the county going forward with submitting these projects. As I said, in addition to these 10, our city partners will be submitting projects as well. Next slide, please. So going back to the beginning of the presentation and revisiting our recommended actions, we're not asking for a formal action on your plate today, but we're looking for general direction to staff to confirm using these proposed evaluation metrics, authorize us to open the call for projects from April 6th to May 3rd, and then direct staff to prepare applications for those 10 projects so that they can be considered as a part of the funding allocation. And I think our next slide is contact information. Oh, nope, next steps, I jumped ahead. So next steps after today's meeting. We will be, here we are asking for you to confirm the evaluation metrics and the project proposal packet. We'll move into the call for projects over the next month. And then we have a little bit of a break while we are preparing for our next phase of public engagement and thinking about how to evaluate these projects. We will be coming back in July to the Transportation Advisory Committee and the WCCC to ask for their recommendation on a prioritized project list, and then preparing for August and September community engagement on that project list. Next slide. So revisiting our overall timeline, we're pretty excited to be here at milestone 2. We slipped a little bit into April. We thought we'd do this in March, but we're pretty close. So we're pretty happy to be moving along in our timeline. Next slide. And here we are at the contact information. So that's what we have for today.
Erin, given that you have both John L. Bell and Fabiola Casas, have I pronounced your name correctly? Thank you. Is there anything that the team wishes to summarize about the community engagement information that was included in our packet today? Or if commissioners have any questions or comments about that?
Fabiola, would you like to give kind of a summary?
Yeah, so essentially the information, as Erin had mentioned, that's included now are key takeaways from the listening sessions, the focus groups, and I hope that's a big takeaway is how the team, Erin's team that we've been partnering with, have been great partners in helping us come along in the process and ensuring that, taking information and data that we get from community engagement work isn't easy to know how to include it into technical processes. And so we have a really thoughtful and dedicated team that we're working with to ensure that, given all of the limitations that we have around time, and right now is an especially difficult time to be asking folks to take time to come and engage on topics that are complex. And so we're really grateful for the partners, the community-based organizations, and the individuals who've come along and contributed to this process. So it hasn't, we have a lot of lessons that we're learning throughout, and we're working hard on consolidating those and making recommendations for future actions. So that's what, it's been really great work, and I hope that we can continue to build on this and not make it siloed engagement activities, because I know that something that we've been working really closely with Latricia Tillman and her team at OEICE, and one of the hopes is to really build community capacity so that in the future we can continue to have folks coming back and going deeper in our engagement. So I'm really proud of the work that we've done so far, and and open to answering any questions. John, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
No, I think you captured it well. Thank you.
I would just jump in and add that we're also not quite done yet. And so we have a couple of workshops coming up. We're planning to do a workshop with Unite Oregon's leadership committee, and then also a CBO leadership workshop. So those will both take place likely in May when we have the project list. And so we'll be able to talk more specifically about that. Those workshops will also be giving us feedback on HB 2001 implementation, since we're doing the engagement for both of those at the same time. So we're pretty excited about that opportunity. And then we're also exploring extending espousal's contract with us so that they can support us through the second phase of broader community engagement on the project list. So you will see John L. and Fabiola related to this project again.
That sounds wonderful. So commissioners, staff has asked us 3 different recommended action questions. They're on slide 12. How about if I checkpoint each one of them? But do feel free along the way to interject your questions. So the first one is to confirm the use of the proposed evaluation metrics to guide the funding allocation process moving forward. Does anyone have any questions, or are you all set on that? I know. Go ahead, Commissioner Rogers.
In past years, a lot of years, we've always used as one of the equity measures that of geographic dispersion. And if you take a look at your chart regarding underrepresented areas, you see them throughout the county. I didn't see that in the criteria. I've asked that question 2 or 3 times over the last few months of staff, and they keep saying we're going to try to even up funding as best we can. I understand there's going to be some changes, but our projects don't do that are being submitted today, and I don't see that's being done at all. So I don't know whether it's you, Stephen, or someone can explain to me what happened.
Yeah, I would just say that the idea of geographic parity, if you will, across the county is considered one of the desired outcomes in the project. So it's an overarching guideline for the program, as opposed to these are more specific metrics for evaluating individual projects. So the intent and consideration of distribution of funds across the county is covered as a part of the broader outcomes of the program, as opposed to the specifics of the evaluation metrics.
We don't know what all the projects are yet either. And so we're not quite ready to have that conversation until we have the projects submitted by the cities in addition to the county. The reason you're seeing projects that are more distributed in districts 1 and 2 right now is because that's where the largest unincorporated areas are. And so those are the projects that only the county would submit. We're not likely to have a city propose a project that's unincorporated. Once we have the entire project list, we've collected everything from the cities, I think we'll be able to have that conversation about what the geographic parity looks like.
If I could ask a clarifying question on that, in which milestone will we be looking at the recommended list and how things look relative to that desired outcome of that geographic parity?
Can we pull up the timeline slide? So we don't have so the July milestone number 3, when the board directs staff to begin engagement around the project list, at that time, we'll have the project list put together for you to review. And so I think that's probably the first time we'll start having that conversation around what that recommendation could look like to move towards that geographic distribution. But I think it's a conversation we'll be having in more detail probably in the months following that as we move into the December final approval. So I'd expect us to be able to have that conversation in late summer and fall.
Thank you. If I could follow up, I mean, I was reading it and trying to do it in my mind. There's about $120 million of proposals in District 1, about $60 million in District 2. District 3, we had maybe 20 million, and District 4 is 0. So is it your intent at some point to then try to allocate more funds to cities? Is that what your idea is? Because I don't, Jerry can speak for himself, but I've got a lot of unincorporated areas that are fairly densely packed, but are not incorporated. That they're not even on the list. So I'm a little stunned, to be honest with you, about the 10 and not the geographic disbursement. But I guess we'll deal with that at the time.
I expect that we're going to have a really robust project list that'll cover all 4 districts once the cities are done submitting their projects over the next month. We've had individual meetings with all of our city staff members, and we have an idea of what projects will be submitted from each of the cities. And so I think we're probably looking at about 25 to 30 projects throughout the county. And I expect that those other districts will be well represented in the overall project list, but we'll know more a month from now when the projects have actually been submitted.
Will you commit to me then? I'm pressing this because it's important. Will you commit to me then that the county is going to look at geographic dispersion and they won't argue only for their 10 projects and say that's all we want, that's they're going to argue about? Or will they look to make certain that a combination of projects will get geographic dispersion of the funds?
The final decision on the funding allocation is the board's. And so I think if the board wants to continue the geographic distribution, it's the board's decision, and staff will be coming forward and making a recommendation to you that meets that.
Yeah. And
thank you.
Commissioner, I think if I could, I just reiterate what Aaron was saying earlier. So the list that you're seeing is just a list of projects that county staff are proposing to move into the evaluation process. Mm-hmm. We understand not nearly all of the projects that are on that list are going to make the final project list. This just moves them into an evaluation process. Mm-hmm. And as Aaron said, we'll be combining that list of county-sponsored projects, if you will, or county-submitted projects with all of the city-submitted projects into a much larger list. All of those projects will be evaluated, and those evaluation results will be brought back forward to both the WCCC and the Board of Commissioners.
So I'll take us back to the first question. Are commissioners ready to confirm the use of the proposed evaluation metrics to guide the MSTIP 23-28 funding allocations process? Commissioner Rogers and Commissioner Willie, do you care to weigh in?
I think I'm still processing a little bit of that. Just to make sure that I understand my own district, I have very little roads that are not in cities that are in the MSTIP district. So I guess when I saw that there was no District 4 projects, I assumed that's because all my district that applies for that is in cities. Am I correct in that?
That's correct. We're expecting City of Hillsborough and North Plains in particular to be submitting probably 4 or 5 projects between them, if not more. And so possibly Banks may have a submittal as well. We've talked to them. And so you will certainly have more submittals from District 4.
And any of my road projects basically falls under my rural roads committee. Is that?
Rural roads are eligible. And so rural roads are eligible for MSTIP. It's a countywide program. And so we did not have a staff recommendation for any additional roads from District 4. If there are other projects that you'd like us to consider submitting as the county, we would just need to know that in the next month so that we can get that submitted for consideration.
Yeah, I get that. The complete list that these projects were selected from is a pretty extensive list. I'm trying to remember. That was a pretty broad list of projects, aren't there?
We had generated an internal staff review list of about, I think, 30 projects, and that included projects that we expect our city partners will be submitting.
I see. Okay.
So back.
Well, I'm sorry. Just let me finish one more quick thing. Just like Roy has been focused on equity and dispersion equally around all the county, I've been focused on major streets, staying with that. So I don't see that clearly defined in what you're proposing here, but I see of the projects it complies. So I want to make sure that I'm still understanding this correctly.
Absolutely. So that is one of the first pieces of information to fill out on the project submittal form. So projects will not go forward unless they meet the eligibility criteria. And one of those eligibility criteria is to be located on the map, the system of countywide interest map that the board acknowledged.
Yes.
That was on one of the previous slides, actually. So we are still sticking to that.
Yes, I see that. I think it's, I don't know. I just saw it. So thank you very much, Aaron. I appreciate you pointing that out to me. So yes, Chair, I am ready to go.
Okay. Your thumbs up on confirming the proposed evaluation metrics. Commissioner Rogers, would you like to weigh in? You don't
Yeah,
have to.
my issues were more on the parity between districts. So in regard to the evaluation metrics, there's no real issues in there. And for that, and as far as directing staff to move forward on that, that's fine.
Okay, so staff, on that question, you've got 5 thumbs up. If I could go to the third question first, on directing staff to prepare applications for this funding consideration for selected county projects. So as we had from our prior work session, there was a longer list that also foreshadowed some city projects. If I understand it correctly, today our staff has brought forward 10 different projects that are all located within urban unincorporated areas, because we are at the Board of Commissioners, the local jurisdiction to advance those projects onto a potential list. Can you confirm I got that right, Ms. Wardell?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I have a detailed question on that list, if I could, but I don't want to get. Do other commissioners have any questions on that list before I ask my question? Okay, so I just want to confirm in looking at the separate document page that you've also listed on the slides, I just want to confirm to make sure I got it right that the Alexander Street project, that one where it says complete street project, that one, Blanton, and also the Walker Road ones, those are all, that's construction money, right? That's not for design work.
Correct. We're asking for construction funding for those projects. Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was clear in my mind. Great,
Yep,
that was my question.
Alexander and 170th were funded for concept design as a part of 3E. And so we'd like to now progress towards construction funding for those projects.
Yeah, I got that part from what it said in the table. Okay, all right. So at least now I have no question on the county project. Commissioner Willie, Vice Chair Willie.
Yeah, just to follow up, that's a great question. I thought that on the Farmington Road project, it says complete street and potential match, but I didn't think we had done the planning scope, whatever you call that, in advance. So
we're doing it now,
we done that?
actually. Yeah, we're in the process. So we received a state transportation growth management grant to do the Farmington concept plan. And so that work is actually being negotiated with ODOT right now. It should work out fairly well timing wise that we'll have that work completed in the next year and then be ready to move into negotiations with the state, ideally, for funding to finish the construction dollars.
And so what are the hoops? You alluded to the fact that we'll probably end up owning that road. What are the hoops we have to jump through to do that?
Well, it's a negotiation with ODOT. It's going to be a pretty expensive project. It's a rural character road that really needs to be upgraded and needs, in addition to transportation facilities, stormwater facilities, and some mitigations related to that. So it would be developing a cost estimate, a detailed cost estimate for the project so that we know what we're getting into, and then figuring out with ODOT what their contribution will be and what the county is comfortable funding as a part of that. And then eventually, if we're comfortable taking jurisdiction or not, given the upgrades that have been promised to the roads. So probably a number of years of negotiations before we'll be quite ready for that. But the first step is understanding how much it's really going to cost and how much money we need to put into it.
And I would assume, go ahead, Stephen, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir.
Well, I was asking for maybe Nafisa to weigh in a little bit here. Since she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 projects on this list, if you have weighed in on your prioritization of those.
Thank you, Commissioner Willie. I did, and I had a longer conversation with the staff, so I'm in support.
Well, I hope so. There's 5 of them in your district there, so $120 million. I'm just asking for. I know that you've been really focused on Farmington Road, and I agree with you on that. So I didn't know if that was if you got to choose one, what would be your choice, and would that be it? But maybe it's too early in the game, so I'll just retract that question of you. So then, just to go back then. And talking about District 4, Aaron, I'd like you to point me someplace after this meeting, point me to where I could see a list of the roads that are in my district that I guess are possible future projects.
Mm-hmm. We can certainly do that.
Thank you. That's all. So, thank you, Chair.
You know, that really emphasizes a need. And I haven't looked at the project site in advance of today. But in our if my memory serves me right, in prior work sessions, you've brought us the map of roads of county significance. Mm-hmm. And that demonstrates of the plethora of roads and streets in the counties, which ones qualify for MSTIP funding. To date, as you've been going through the initial community engagement program and hearing from constituents about thoughts and concerns, do you have a sense that we're making that map clearly enough available? And will the call for projects application set, will that continue to include that map so that every step along the way we're carrying that really important resource with us?
So yes, we have talked to all of our partners at the cities who will be submitting the projects about that map a number of times. They made the initial recommendation to the board to approve it. And so we are including, along with the project application, a link to an online map that includes that as a layer. And so the cities have been using that as they're doing their screening and their identification of their projects. We will add that map to the website at some point. That's something that's been on our list to do. We actually need to add some of our more recent materials up there. And so we'll make sure that that's available there as well.
I think one of the learnings that I'm having here for myself is that when you come back to us in the future with this next phase, right? Future phase, future milestones, and we have a packet, I appreciated, I looked at all the attachments that were in the list in the work session packet. If you could include a link to that tool as well, mm-hmm. that will make it real obvious to us that it's there. We just need to click on it. Does that make sense?
We can certainly do that.
Okay.
And we'll also be adding the proposed projects to our mapping tools. And so I think the next time we come in front of you, we'll actually have a map of the proposed projects to share.
Okay. Commissioner Rogers, go ahead.
This question is to Stephen. Much as the state has orphan highways, and they're attempting to see how they, you mentioned Farmington is a good example. They don't really want to own that and want to have some methodology in which to transfer it. Hall's another one, and Tigard, and there's a whole assortment of them. Did the work of the staff or any of the technical committees, did they look at where we might partner with cities to take and transfer some of these streets. I understand we've got an investment that you may not have had in your 10 list, or you may have, I don't know, but where the end result is we just don't fix something and then we still own it at the end. I mean, is there a transference provision? Did you have any work along that line or discussion along those lines?
We haven't had an extensive discussion at this point, but we historically and would continue to work with our city partners on jurisdictional transfers where that's appropriate. And there are some decision criteria that go into that. There's a map adopted in our transportation system plan that identifies roads that we anticipate remaining under state and county jurisdiction over the long term. Roads that are not on that map, we do look for opportunities to explore jurisdictional transfer to the cities, and providing a funding opportunity, much like the state would look at providing funding for Farmington, and then also be looking for opportunities to transfer the jurisdiction of that roadway, the improved roadway, to the county. We often have those kinds of discussions with our city partners as well.
And I can add.
Yeah, Aaron, let me just finish up. I apologize. I know you have those discussions, and I know that that's a general comment, but there's no opportunity fund of sorts. I mean, for that kind of activity, we have it for different things, for match. But is there, in our funding portion of it, is there any opportunities, and is there any discussion to say maybe we ought to focus on transferring that liability with some cash? I can think of several roads down in my area. I would suspect that that there might be in other districts as well, where we would fund those on a partial basis, match, not in total, to transfer it so that we start consolidating the road network. It's really county of significance, not just lots of roads. Is that being something that can be considered in the 23-28 period, or is that something that's well outside the realm of what you're trying to do? And I'll stop with that.
Yeah, well, I think, again, this is just one more process that we're undertaking, but doing so within that larger policy framework of that map of roads that would remain under county jurisdiction long term. So again, just as a part of our ongoing work, when cities annex new areas, jurisdictional transfer is a part of that conversation. As we're programming MSTIP funds, jurisdictional transfer may be a part of that discussion if that's appropriate for a particular facility. So it's not a formal criterion, if you will, I guess, in the process, but it's certainly a part of our ongoing discussions.
And I was just going to add, and I think it'll be particularly interesting to Commissioner Rogers, but City of Tigard's project priority is Greenberg Road, and they're framing that around a jurisdictional transfer. So they're proposing it as a MSTIP candidate with an eventual transfer to City of Tigard. So it is something that we do talk about with the cities.
That's good. I wish they'd do it on Bull Mountain. I wish they'd do it on Hall Boulevard as well. But there's a whole bunch of them.
There's a lot of need.
Yeah, and I think I would advocate, I think a lot of our city partners have been very good about understanding the county's desire to make sure that the appropriate jurisdiction has jurisdiction over the appropriate roadways. And so we've had very good partnerships with Tigard and others around the county in that regard.
Are there any other questions that commissioners have at this time? Okay, so is everyone comfortable with having staff prepare the applications for this set of county projects at this time? Commissioner Fye, I'll need you to weigh in.
Yeah, yes, for me, Chair Harrington. Thank you.
Commissioner Rogers, did I miss your thumbs up?
No, I still am very reticent on it, but I understand that that'll be part of the process. So sure, go forward.
Okay, and then the last question, are we ready to have staff open a call for projects for the time period April 6th to May 3rd? And I assume Commissioner Fye, you're okay as well.
Yes.
Okay, all righty. Are there any last questions or comments from commissioners to staff on this work session topic? Seeing none, it's 2:00 now. We have 3 different executive sessions ahead of us. Would commissioners like to take, or do we need at least a 10 to 15-minute break to transition over?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I could be ready in about 10 minutes for you if the board is ready.
Okay. All right, and as Mr. Anderson, as I understand it, we will make one motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 sub 2 sub H, sub 2 sub B, and sub 2 sub F.
That's correct, Chair.
What are the wishes of the commission for such a motion?
So move.
We have a motion from Vice Chair Willie, a second from Commissioner Treese. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. So we'll be back at 2:16 on the executive session link.
All right. Thank you, commissioners.